I was late, running around the house like a maniac, trying to prepare breakfast for my siblings. My father had already left for work, leaving me in charge of breakfast, lunch, and waiting for the bus. I was wearing pajama pants underneath my outfit, as I had enough time to dress properly. When the bus arrived, I rushed the kids out the door and, with no time to spare, headed out for my car as well. What a sight! I ran out of the house juggling my entire life in my two hands. My shoes, tights, makeup bag, and half-empty coffee mug were in my left hand, my coat, car keys, purse, and lunch bag in the other. I had no time to pay attention to how cold the ground was, or to the fact that my shirt was buttoned wrong. I probably looked like a walking hazard sign. Of course, because I wasn't in enough of a mess, my phone began to vibrate from inside my pajama pants. I groaned, but did not pick it up. My car was parked on the opposite side of the street. I stopped at the end of the sidewalk, stared down at my bare feet, cringed, and then ran out into the rough road barefoot. By then, the vibrating had stopped, if only momentarily. It continued again as I struggled to open the door without collapsing. I moved everything from my right hand to my left and quickly pulled the door open. The vibrating of my phone ceased again, but continued within seconds. I threw my belongings into the passenger seat, threw myself into the driver's seat, and slammed the door shut, and reached for my phone. It was Molly. "Hello?" I answered in a concerned, high-pitched voice. Why had she called me 3 consecutive times unless something was wrong? Molly worked part-time for my father, so I began to think the worst when I heard her breathing heavily on the other end. Hello? I asked again, this time with more agitation in my voice. "Ella! Ella, finally!" she declared. "You, my dear, are one hard girl to get in touch with." What's going on, Molly? Is everything okay at the store? Is my father okay? My belongings were strewn all over the place. The coffee mug had spilled on my pajama pants and shoes, and my keys had somehow made it to the back seat, and my coat was under the passenger seat. I sighed heavily. "The store," Molly replied. "Ella, it's Wednesday. I don't work on Wednesdays. Ricky works on Wednesdays." She sounded annoyed, too. My father's employees live under the misapprehension that I have their work schedules memorized. "Sorry," I answered dryly. "Okay, so if you're not in the store and my father's fine, then what's up?" "I have someone for you," she said. I stopped breathing for a moment. Of course she did. Molly was the queen of shidduchim. She herself was married with 3 children. She gained nothing but joy through making other people as happy as she was with her husband. My mind began racing with names of who it could possibly be. Where had she met him? Did she know his family? Was he a good guy? A normal guy? But I could not allow myself to ask her any of them. I laid my head back against the seat and inhaled. "Don't forget to breathe," I told myself. "Ella, hello?" I raised my head. Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. What's his name, Molly?" "Aaron Harris." "Aaron Harris? As in the New Yorker that went out with Hannah Silverman a few years ago?" I asked, surprised. "Oh, so you do remember him." "Shucks," she answered. "I was hoping that you would remember that he dated her. Do you know him?" No, I don't know him. He dated my classmate. That doesn't mean much." "Oh, good!" she exclaimed. "Good. Then I want to set you guys up," she squealed. "Set me up with Aaron Harris? What do you even know about him?" I asked sternly. Suddenly, the fact that I was late for work didn't matter anymore. I was completely absorbed in the conversation. "Well, I know his sister Tiffy, and I've heard good things about him from his parents as well as from her. He's an excellent guy, Ella. You should look into it. I'm serious. This guy might be the right guy for you." I thought about it for a moment. "Well, if you're so sure he's a good match for me, I'll speak to my father about it, and if he thinks it's a good idea, I'll call you and we'll start arranging, okay?" "Excellent, Ella. That's great. So okay, good. So speak to your father and call me after you do," she gushed. "Oh, Ella, if this works out, oh, I'll be so happy for you. You've had your share of troubles. You truly deserve to be happy," she added in before I hung up. "Thanks, Molly. I'll be in touch later," I said. I shut the phone and stared ahead. Nothing about that conversation bothered me until her last comment. You truly deserve to be happy. From the time my mother left us, my life had become a charity case in the eyes of other people. I was a poor, broken doll that needed to be put back together constantly. After all the struggles in my life, I deserved to have a small amount of happiness. But I was perfectly happy with my life. Yes, it was hard to raise my siblings and run the household with my father, but it was my life, and I couldn't imagine living any other way. To me, it was as if Molly were saying to me, "Your whole life has been terrible until now, and here comes my solution to your misery." Instead of putting the key in the ignition and heading to work, I laid my head back against the seat. Then I gathered my belongings, opened the door, and headed out across the street to my house. Now that I was on shidduch watch, I couldn't just waltz into work looking the way I did. Whatever happened with this guy, Aaron Harris, I had to be on my best behavior because, if not him, then someone else would surely come along shortly thereafter. We went on our first date 2 weeks later. He picked me up from my house in his rental car, all spiffy and shiny, the exterior of which reflected the streetlights and blinded me as I approached it. I could feel the eyes of my father and my siblings burning holes into my back as they watched from the living room window. My father had tried to speak to me before I left about how I should be feeling and what to expect. As much as I love and value my father's advice, this was something that I felt he could not help me with, though he too had once been in my shoes. I had never met Aaron before I entered the car. I had seen pictures of him, and we had spoken on the phone about 3 times before we decided to meet, but this was the first time we had come face to face. I opened the door. "Hey," he said nervously. I stared at him almost blankly as I slid in, shutting the door behind me. His kind blue eyes settled on me, a bright smile illuminating his skinny face. His dirty blonde hair was tucked casually underneath his hat. His face was clean-shaven, and his skin smooth and pale. His long fingers were drumming a silent rhythm on the steering wheel. He was wearing a gray pinstripe suit, black shoes, and a black hat. I could finally match the voice to the face, the images to the emotions. "Hey," I answered back almost breathlessly. I was beyond nervous. I adjusted myself in the seat, clicked the seatbelt on, and turned my head cautiously in his direction. "I'm Ella." "Really? Oh, thank goodness. I thought a stranger had gotten into the car." He laughed. "I'm Aaron," he said, smiling. "Really? Ha! For a moment I thought I had gotten into the wrong car," I joked. He chuckled. Silence descended. "So, shall we?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Yeah," I mumbled. I was so overwhelmed with keeping myself in check I could hardly speak. He put the car in drive, and off we went to an unknown destination under the cover of night. I felt as if the city that I had lived in my entire life had suddenly become foreign to me, in the car of the man who could very likely become my husband. I was seeing the city from an entirely different point of view, as if I knew that everything I saw out of the window could be a topic of conversation, so I had to swallow everything around me in one gulp. When he pulled into the driveway of the Marriott Hotel, I was not surprised. Every one of my friends who had dated out-of-towners had been taken there. He parked the car in front of the valet, cut the engine, and without a word climbed out. He was taller than I expected. I smiled shyly as he came around to open the door for me. My heart was beating 1,000,000 miles per minute. I felt as if I was going to collapse. I had never been so nervous in my entire life. Was this a sign that it had been a bad idea? I swallowed hard and followed him inside the hotel. My heels clicked loudly on the marble lobby floor. He walked ahead of me instead of behind me, leading me confidently as if he were a tour guide and not a date. Suddenly, the hotel I had been in hundreds of times before felt like anew. Every painting on the walls, the statues, the atmosphere had a completely different feel to it. Maybe because I was so nervous that I had lost contact with reality. He stopped abruptly in front of the cafe. "Do you want to sit here, or do you want to go somewhere more private?" he asked. "Oh, here's fine." He led me to a table in a dimly lit corner. How romantic. That way, he wouldn't be able to see me grinding my teeth in anxiety. Smart man. Smart man. We sat down. Silence descended again. The anxiety continued to build up inside of me. "Say something, Ella," I told myself. "So, Aaron," I began, how do you like Chicago?" It's okay. It's not New York, but it's nice." "What do you mean?" "Oh, I don't know. New York has a certain feeling to it that Chicago doesn't have. I guess that's just because I'm very comfortable in New York." Yeah, I get what you're saying." He smiled, and I smiled. Was that it? Was I meant to say something else? Silence fell again. I cringed. If this was the way the entire night was going to go, I certainly did not want a second date.